I am Anubis, the guardian of the dead. They call me the sacred embalmer, the lord of the necropolis, the one upon his mountain. I protect the tombs and guide souls beyond the veil. I am not the end. I am the passage. Will you be ready?
They burn, the words of the forgotten.
The fire consumes them all.
Anubis, the god who stands at the threshold. Before the Book of the Dead was written, before Osiris sat on the throne of the underworld, before Egypt even knew the name of the god who would rule the afterlife, there was the jackal who guarded the graves. In the earliest days, when burials were shallow and the desert pressed close to the living, the dead did not rest easily. Jackals roamed the edges of settlements, digging into the earth, pulling bodies back into the open. The Egyptians could not stop them. So they did something stranger. They made the jackal a god. By carving Anubis into the lintels of tombs, painting him onto the walls of burial chambers, naming him the foremost of the Westerners, the dead who lived on the sunset bank of the Nile, they transformed their fear into protection. They believed that if a god wore the face of the predator would not attack. It would guard. And for centuries, it worked. In the Old Kingdom, Anubis was not a servant or a guide. He was the undisputed Lord of the Dead. No other god stood above him in the underworld. He ruled from his mountain, the cliffs overlooking the necropolis. And he did not ask permission to take a soul. He watched. He waited. He decided. His name in the oldest texts was Khentiamentiu, he who is before the Westerners. The Westerners were the dead because the sun sets in the west, and every sunset was a small death. Anubis stood at the front of that silent procession. He was the first face the dead saw when they opened their eyes on the other side. But the underworld did not remain his forever. The birth of a different kind of god. When the myth of Osiris spread across Egypt, the story of a murdered king, a grieving wife, a brother who cut his body into pieces and scattered him across the Nile. Anubis did not fight for his throne. He did something more important. He became the first embalmer. According to the oldest texts, Anubis wrapped Osiris in linen, preserving his body so that it would not decay, creating the first mummy. This act did not simply honor the dead. It invented the entire Egyptian concept of the afterlife. Without the preservation of the body, the soul could not recognize itself. Without the mummy, the journey ended before it began. The Egyptians believed that a person had several parts: the Ka, life force, the Ba, personality, and the Akh, the transformed spirit. But none of these could survive without the physical body to return to. Anubis understood this before anyone else. He was the first to realize that death was not a single event, but a process. And that process could be stopped, or at least delayed, if the body was protected. So he developed the rituals, the washing of the body, the removal of the organs, the drying with natron salt, the wrapping layer by layer, with prayers spoken over every fold of linen. Each movement had meaning. Each prayer was a map. When he finished, Osiris was whole again. Not alive. Something had changed in the crossing, in the time spent in the dark at the bottom of the river, in the long sealed silence of the chest. But he was present. He was there. And Anubis did not claim Osiris's throne afterward. When Osiris was resurrected, not as a living king, but as the ruler of what lay beyond, Anubis knelt before him, not in submission, in recognition. The god who had ruled the dead stepped aside and became something rarer, the god who guides them. From that moment, His role was sealed. Not the judge, not the executioner. The one who leads you through the dark so that you never walk alone. The hall of truth and the weight of a heart. Every soul that left Egypt for the next world eventually arrived in the same place. A vast, silent chamber, the Hall of Two Truths. And standing beside the golden scales, waiting without impatience, was Anubis. He did not speak. He did not threaten. He placed the deceased's heart on one side of the scale. On the other, the feather of Mayat, truth, balance, order. This was not a symbolic gesture. The Egyptians believed that the heart was not just an organ, but the seat of memory, emotion, and conscience. Every action a person took in life was recorded there. Every kindness, every cruelty, every lie told, every hand held, every moment of silence when someone should have spoken.
The feather was impossibly light. It had to be. Maya was not a goddess who demanded perfection. She demanded honesty. The feather represented a life lived without self-deception. A life where the weight of your actions did not crush the people around you. If the heart was lighter than the feather, if the life it remembered had been honest, kind, and just, Anubis would step aside. He would lead the soul toward the field of reeds, a perfected mirror of the world they had known, where the Nile flowed forever and nothing suffered. There, the soul would eat, drink, farm, and love for eternity. It was not a distant heaven. It was home, but without pain. But if the heart was heavier, burdened by cruelty, lies, and the weight of harm done to others, then Anubis did nothing to save it. From the shadows behind the scales came Ammit, the devourer, a creature with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the hunger of something older than judgment itself. She did not torture. She did not delay. She consumed. And when the heart was gone, the soul simply ended. No afterlife. No reincarnation. No second chance. Just the silence of something that had never existed at all. The Egyptians had no hell, no fire, no eternal suffering. They had something worse, non-existence. To be forgotten completely. To never wake again. Anubis watched this without emotion. Not because he was cruel. Because his duty was not mercy. It was balance. The jackal's true power. Outside the Hall of Truth, Anubis moved differently. He was not only the weigher of hearts. He was the protector of tombs, the patron of embalmers, the god who stood upon the mountain and watched the desert for anyone who would disturb the dead. In one ancient text, Set, the murderer of Osiris, transformed himself into a leopard to attack the body of the dead king. Anubis caught him, subdued him, and flayed his skin. He wore that skin as a warning for all eternity. No one desecrates the dead in his sight. This is why priests who performed mummification wore leopard skin robes. Not for decoration. To carry Anubis's authority with them as they worked. They became his hands, his eyes, his presence in the room where the dead were prepared for what came next. Anubis also had another name, Emiat, he who is in his wrappings. This referred to a mysterious fetish, a headless animal skin tied to a pole that was placed in tombs and used during rituals. No one knows exactly what it meant, but it appears in some of the oldest burial scenes ever discovered. Anubis was there before the pyramids, before the great temples, before Egypt itself was united. And when the Greeks arrived centuries later, they looked at this jackal-headed god who led souls through darkness, and they saw their own Hermes, the guide of the dead, standing beside him. They combined them into a single figure, Hermanubis, an Egyptian face, a Greek name, the same silent work. The Romans, too, would carry his image across their empire. They depicted him on altars and amulets, sometimes standing beside the dying, sometimes walking ahead of them, always facing forward, always knowing the way. The rituals that survived. Every Egyptian funeral was a reenactment of what Anubis had done for Osiris. The mummification took 70 days. The body was washed in palm wine and Nile water. The brain was removed through the nose and discarded. The Egyptians did not think the brain mattered. The heart was left inside. The heart was everything. Then the body was covered in natron, a salt that dried every drop of moisture. After 40 days, it was hard and light and empty of anything that could decay. The embalmers then filled the body with linen and spices. They wrapped it, layer after layer, placing amulets between the folds. Each amulet had a purpose. The scarab beetle over the heart was inscribed with a spell that said, "Do not stand as a witness against me." The final layer was a shroud. Over the face, a mask, often painted with the features of the deceased, so that the soul would recognize itself. And then the opening of the mouth ceremony. A priest touched the mummy's mouth with a special tool, a ritual adze. This was not symbolic. The Egyptians believed it literally reopened the senses. The dead could now breathe, see, eat, and speak in the afterlife. And who presided over all of this? Not Osiris, not our ANUBIS. His statue was placed in the tomb. His name was spoken in every prayer. His presence was the difference between a body and a mummy, between a corpse and a soul that could travel. Why Anubis still walks beside us. No one knows when the last priest of Anubis closed the last temple door. The worship faded. The ritual stopped. The language was forgotten. But the god did not vanish. He is still there in every story about a figure who meets you after death, who doesn't ask for your wealth or your titles, who places your heart, the only thing you truly carry, on a scale and watches to see what it weighs. The ancient Egyptians did not invent the afterlife because they were afraid of dying. They invented it because they had already seen what Anubis could do. They had watched him take a murdered king, torn apart and scattered across a river, and bring him back, not whole, but present, not alive, but undeniable. That was enough for them. It was more than enough. Anubis was never the god of death. He was the god of what happens next. The one who waits at the threshold between the life you lived and the eternity that follows. Who smells the truth on you the way a jackal smells the dead in a shallow grave. Not with cruelty, but with certainty. Because a jackal does not judge the body it finds. It simply knows it is there. When you stand before him, nothing matters except what you actually did. Not what you said you would do. Not what you wished you had done. Not the prayers your family recited over your body. Not the size of your tomb. What you did. And whether your heart, in the end, is light enough to pass. The Egyptians didn't build pyramids to worship death. They built them because Anubis taught them that the journey didn't end when the body stopped breathing. It only began.